Pastor hears noises in the church at night, and what he found there left him speechless. Father Michael Reynolds was finishing his evening prayers when he heard strange sounds coming from inside the church. Having served the community of Clearwater, a small town in rural Pennsylvania, for 15 years, he knew every creak and echo of that centuries-old building. But this was different. It was nearly midnight when he decided to investigate. He grabbed a candle and walked slowly down the hallway connecting the rectory to the church. What he found inside made his heart stop. A woman huddled with 2 small children, shivering from the cold on the most secluded pew. "Please don't call anyone," the woman whispered before he could even speak. The faint candlelight illuminated her face, and Michael's legs nearly gave way. It was Jessica, his younger sister, who had vanished from town 5 years ago without a trace. Now she was here, her hair shorter and her face marked by hardship, shielding 2 children who couldn't have been older than 6 and 8. "Jessica," he murmured in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" "Michael, I know you have every right to hate me for what I did, but I need your help," she said, clutching the children to her chest. The older boy stared at the priest with wide, frightened eyes, while the little girl seemed to be asleep against her mother's shoulder. Both wore simple, travel-stained clothes. "These children," Michael began. "They're my children, Ethan and Emily," Jessica interrupted. "We're running, Michael. He found us, and we had to leave in the middle of the night." The priest knelt before her, struggling to process the situation. His sister, who had been just a teenager when she left, was now a mother of 2, and clearly in danger. "Who's after you?" he asked gently. "My ex-husband. He found out something about me, about Ethan." She glanced at the boy. "If he finds us, he'll try to take them from me forever." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us so much as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Michael helped his sister and the children to their feet and led them to the rectory. Little Emily had a fever, and Ethan kept looking around fearfully. It was obvious the 3 had endured terrible hardship. "You must be hungry," the priest said, warming milk in the kitchen. "Are you really a priest?" Ethan asked, eyeing Michael's cassock. "Yes, I am, son. And your mother is my sister. That makes me your uncle." The boy nodded but remained wary. Jessica whispered that they'd traveled by bus for 2 days, sleeping in stations and eating only what little food she could afford. "Why come back here, Jessica? You know this is the first place he'll look," Michael said, worried. "Because you're the only person I can trust," she replied, tears in her eyes. "And because Ethan's been asking questions I don't know how to answer." The priest studied the boy, who was sipping milk slowly, and noticed something unsettling. Ethan had the same dark eyes as him, the same thick brows, the same shape of face. "Jessica, we need to talk," Michael said, motioning for her to follow him to the porch. Outside, she finally confessed the truth she'd carried for years. Ethan wasn't the son of her ex-husband, Robert Johnson, a powerful businessman from the neighboring town. The boy was the result of a relationship she'd had right after leaving home, with a man who abandoned her the moment he learned she was pregnant. Robert always suspected, but he wasn't sure. 2 weeks ago, he did a DNA test without telling me, she explained. When he found out Ethan wasn't his son, he flew into a rage. Said he'd report me for fraud and take both children away from me. What about Emily? Emily is his daughter, but Robert said a liar like me doesn't deserve to raise any child. He has money, influence, expensive lawyers. I wouldn't stand a chance in court. Michael felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As a priest, he'd taken vows of celibacy and complete dedication to the church. As a brother, he couldn't abandon Jessica when she needed him most. The next morning, he woke to the sound of a car pulling up outside the rectory. Through the window, he saw it was Bishop Henry, the diocesan bishop, making one of his surprise visits. "Quick, you need to hide in the attic," he whispered to Jessica and the children. The 3 hurried up the narrow stairs to the small attic, where old church items were stored. Michael quickly tidied the kitchen and went to greet the bishop. "Good morning, Father Michael. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," said Bishop Henry, a 60-year-old man, elegant and observant. "Not at all, Bishop Henry. It's always an honor to have you." Over coffee, the bishop mentioned troubles he'd been having with some priests in the diocese who weren't properly following church rules. Michael listened nervously, thinking of the family hidden upstairs. "By the way, Father Michael, a local businessman came to me yesterday asking for help finding his wife and children. Said they'd disappeared and he's very worried," Bishop Henry remarked casually. Michael's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. "Oh, that's terrible. I hope he finds them soon." "Robert Johnson is his name." "Know him?" "No, Bishop Henry, never heard of him." The bishop finished his coffee and announced he needed to leave for other visits. As soon as he left, Michael rushed to the attic to say the danger had passed, for now. He found the children rummaging through old boxes while Jessica tried to quiet them. Ethan was holding an old photo and asked, "Uncle Michael, who's this woman in the picture with you?" It was a photo from 15 years earlier, when Michael was still in seminary. He looked young, smiling beside a pregnant woman. The priest paled at the image. "She's an old acquaintance," he replied, taking the photo from the boy's hands. Jessica studied the picture and grew confused. The pregnant woman bore a striking resemblance to her, and Michael seemed genuinely moved seeing it. "Michael, you never told me you dated someone before joining the church," she said when they went back downstairs. "Some chapters of our lives are better left in the past," he answered, tucking the photo into a drawer. During lunch, Emily started coughing badly and developed a high fever. The girl, already weak from the exhausting journey, seemed truly ill. "She needs a doctor," Jessica said worriedly. "We can't take her to the town hospital, it's too risky. Robert might have people watching." Michael thought of a solution. Dr. William Thompson was a retired physician who lived alone on a small farm outside town. He'd been the community doctor for 40 years and was discreet. The priest decided to seek him out. "Dr. William, I need a favor. A child is sick and I can't take her to the hospital for personal reasons," Michael explained when he arrived at the farm. "Of course, Father. You know you can count on me." The retired doctor, a 70-year-old man with white hair and steady hands, followed Michael back to the rectory and examined Emily carefully. "It's a severe respiratory infection. With the right treatment, she'll recover in a few days," Dr. William diagnosed. While prescribing the medication, the doctor looked closely at Jessica and seemed to recognize her. "Excuse me for asking, but aren't you Jessica Reynolds, Father Michael's sister?" "I am," she replied tensely. "I thought I remembered you. Your name came up in a court case a few years ago. Robert Johnson was being sued for tax evasion, and you were one of the prosecution's witnesses." Jessica turned pale. She had forgotten that Dr. William had been called as a medical expert in that case. "What happened with that case?" Michael asked. "Robert got off on a technicality, but his reputation was damaged. After that, he became even more controlling and vengeful," the doctor explained. "If she's running from him, she has every reason to hide." After Dr. William left, promising to return the next day to check on Emily's progress, Michael and Jessica talked about the past that connected them to that dangerous man. "I worked as a secretary at the accounting firm that handled Robert's businesses," Jessica explained. "That's where I discovered the irregularities. When I refused to falsify documents, he fired me. After that, he started harassing me, saying I had ruined his reputation." "And how did you end up marrying him?" "He changed tactics. Instead of intimidating me, he started courting me. Said he had changed, that he wanted a fresh start. I was young, alone in the city, with no family nearby." She looked at Michael with a mix of hurt and sadness. "I thought he had really become a better person." "Jessica, about that time, when you left home, you didn't even say goodbye, Michael. One day I was here, the next you had entered the seminary without even explaining why. I felt abandoned." The weight of guilt crushed Michael. He had fled to the seminary precisely to escape a complicated situation, leaving his younger sister behind alone and confused. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, while the children slept in the guest room, Michael and Jessica talked in the kitchen. She told him about the last 5 years of marriage to Robert, how he had gradually become more controlling and possessive. At first, he was overly attentive. He wanted to know where I was every minute, who I spoke to, what I bought. Said it was because he loved me so much, she recalled. After Ethan was born, things got worse. He always treated the boy differently, colder. And when Emily was born? For a while, things improved. Robert was proud to have a daughter, but his jealousy toward Ethan never went away. The boy started noticing his father didn't love him the same way he loved his sister. Michael watched Ethan sleeping peacefully and felt a pang in his chest. Regardless of who the boy's biological father was, he was suffering because of the adult's conflicts. Jessica, do you have any documents proving Robert has no legal rights over Ethan? I have the original birth certificate where the father is listed as unknown. Robert only got registered as the father because we married later, and he filed a voluntary paternity declaration, she explained. But now that he knows the truth, he could reverse it. What about Emily? That's the hardest part. Emily is his daughter, so he has legal rights to her. If he can prove I'm an unfit mother, he could get full custody. The next day, Dr. William returned to examine Emily, who was already feeling better thanks to the medication. Meanwhile, Mrs. Catherine, the parish secretary of over 20 years, arrived to organize the week's schedule. Mrs. Catherine was a 55-year-old unmarried woman who had dedicated her entire life to working at the church. She had always harbored a special affection for Father Michael, though she had never openly expressed her feelings. Father Michael, I've noticed you've been looking very tired lately. Is everything all right? She asked, straightening the papers on the office desk. I'm fine, Mrs. Catherine. Just some personal concerns. If you need anything, you can count on me. You know I'd do anything to help you. The way she spoke made Michael uneasy. Catherine had always been very devoted, but lately he had noticed her watching him differently, more intensely. By the way, Father, last night I saw lights on in the rectory very late. Wouldn't it be better to lock everything up before bed? You never know what kind of people might be lurking around, Catherine remarked, seemingly casual. Thank you for your concern. I'll be more careful. After she left, Michael realized he needed to be more cautious. Catherine was far too observant, and if she suspected something, she might ask uncomfortable questions. That afternoon, while Jessica helped Emily with her medicine, Ethan approached Michael in the office. Uncle Michael, can I ask you something? Of course, my boy. Why are my hands just like yours? The boy stretched his small hands next to the priest's. Michael looked and was struck by the resemblance. Both had long fingers, a small scar on the right thumb, and the same way of gesturing when they spoke. Sometimes people in the same family share similar traits, he replied, trying to steer the conversation away. But you and my mom are siblings, right? I look more like you than her, Ethan observed, far too sharp for his age. Ethan, some things are complicated to explain. When you're older, you'll understand better. My mom gets sad when I ask about my dad. She always changes the subject or makes an excuse to leave. Michael knelt to the boy's height and held his little hands. Your mother loves you very much, Ethan. Sometimes adults keep secrets to protect the people they love. It doesn't mean they're lying out of malice. Do you have secrets too, Uncle Michael? The question struck the priest like a knife. How could he explain to a child that his entire life was built on secrets and sacrifices? We all have things we'd rather keep to ourselves, my son. What matters is always acting with love and doing what's right. That night, a fierce storm hit Clearwater. Violent winds knocked down trees, and the power went out. The makeshift family gathered in the living room, lit only by candles. I'm scared of thunder, Emily whispered, snuggling into Jessica's lap. You don't need to be afraid, sweetheart. God is watching over us, Michael said, sitting on the floor beside them. Ethan watched his uncle with growing admiration. For the first time in his life, he felt protected by a father figure who truly cared about him. Uncle Michael, did you always want to be a priest? The boy asked. When I was young, I had other dreams. I wanted a family, children, a simple and happy life, Michael answered honestly, gazing at the candle flames. But sometimes, life takes us down paths we didn't plan. Do you regret it? The question echoed in the quiet room. Jessica looked at her brother. curious to hear his answer. "I've learned that regret is too heavy a burden to carry. It's better to accept the choices we've made and try to do our best with them." "But are you happy?" Ethan pressed. Michael looked at his sister and the two children, bathed in the soft candlelight, and felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't known in a long time. "Right now, yes, I'm happy." During the early hours, the storm passed, but left the city without power. In the silence that followed, Michael stayed awake, thinking about his life, his choices, and the responsibility he now carried. In the morning, Dr. William arrived early, worried about Emily because of the cold, damp night. "How did she sleep?" he asked, examining the girl. "Much better. The fever went down and she slept through the night," Jessica replied. "Great. With 2 more days of medication, she'll be fully recovered." While the doctor examined Emily, he spoke with Michael about the family's situation. "Father, I don't know the details of what's happening, but I can see you're in a difficult spot. Robert Johnson isn't a man who gives up easily. If he's really looking for your sister, he'll eventually find her here. What do you advise?" "You need legal help. I know an attorney in Philadelphia who specializes in family law and domestic violence. She's handled cases involving powerful men like Robert before." Dr. William wrote the attorney's number on a piece of paper and handed it to Michael. "Her name is Attorney Sarah Mitchell. Tell her I referred you. She'll know how to protect your sister and the children." After the doctor left, Michael talked to Jessica about the possibility of seeking professional help. "Michael, I don't have money to pay for an expensive attorney from Philadelphia," she said, discouraged. "Leave that to me. The church has some emergency funds set aside. Besides, Dr. Williams said she's handled cases like this before. She might agree to a payment plan or even work pro bono. You do that for me, even after everything that happened between us? Jessica, you're my sister. No matter what happened in the past, I'll never abandon you when you need me." That afternoon, Michael called Attorney Sarah Mitchell from a payphone in town to avoid the call being traced. "Attorney Sarah, my name is Father Michael Reynolds. Dr. William Thompson gave me your number. I'm calling on behalf of my sister, who's fleeing an abusive ex-husband." "Father Michael, I can see you as early as tomorrow if it's urgent. Dr. William already called and explained part of the situation. The problem is, my sister can't travel to Philadelphia. She's hiding with 2 young children. In that case, I can come to you. Where are you?" "In Clearwater. But attorney, I need to be honest. We can't afford much for your services." "Father, when it comes to protecting children, we always find a way to make it work. I'll be there tomorrow morning." When Michael returned home, he found a troubling situation. Mrs. Catherine was in the kitchen, talking to Jessica and asking questions about her stay in the parish house. "So you're Father Michael's sister? What a coincidence. I've never heard of you before," Catherine said, suspicion lacing her voice. "I lived far away." "It's been a long time since I visited my brother," Jessica replied, clearly uncomfortable. "And these beautiful children are yours? The boy has an interesting resemblance to Father Michael, don't you think?" Catherine remarked, watching Ethan playing in the yard. Michael walked into the kitchen just as she made that observation and felt a chill. "Mrs. Catherine, what a surprise. I didn't know you were coming today." "Oh, Father Michael, I was just getting to know your family. How lovely to have relatives visiting." She smiled, but there was something forced in her expression. "Jessica, could you take the children inside? It's getting cold out," Michael said, trying to cut the conversation short. After Jessica left with Ethan and Emily, Catherine approached Michael with a serious look. "Father, I must confess I'm worried about you. Ever since this woman arrived, I've noticed you've been different, more tense." "Mrs. Catherine, Jessica is my sister. It's only natural that I'd be concerned about her well-being and the children's." Of course. But you know how people in town talk, don't you? And that boy, he really does bear a striking resemblance to you." Michael realized Mrs. Catherine was beginning to suspect something more than a simple family visit. "Mrs. Catherine, I hope you're not implying anything improper. Jessica is my sister and Ethan is my nephew. Period. Forgive me, Father, I meant no offense. It's just, well, I worry about your reputation. You're a respected man in the community." After Mrs. Catherine left, Michael spoke with Jessica about the need to be even more cautious. She suspects something, Michael. I could tell by the way she looked at Ethan making comparisons. We'll have to be more careful. Attorney Sarah is coming tomorrow, and I hope she can help us resolve this legally. That night, Ethan had a nightmare and went looking for Michael in his room. The priest woke to the boy, gently shaking his arm. "Uncle Michael, I dreamed the bad man found us and was taking Emily away." Michael sat up in bed and opened his arms, letting the boy snuggle close. "It was just a dream, Ethan. No one will separate you from your sister or your mother. Do you promise?" "I promise I'll do everything in my power to protect you all." "Uncle Michael, can I sleep here with you?" "I'm scared I'll dream again." The priest hesitated for a moment, thinking of the vows he'd taken, but looking at the frightened boy, he realized some situations went beyond rules. "Of course, my son. You can stay here." Ethan lay beside Michael and soon fell asleep, holding his uncle's hand. The priest stayed awake for hours, watching the child's peaceful face and feeling a connection he'd never experienced before. The next morning, Attorney Sarah arrived as promised. She was a woman in her 40s, with black hair tied in a bun, modest clothing, and a determined gaze. She spoke at length with Jessica, taking detailed notes of the entire situation. "Mrs. Reynolds, reviewing your case, I see several irregularities in Robert's threats. First, he can't simply take the children from you without a court process. Second, the fact that Ethan isn't his biological son actually works in your favor." "How so?" asked Jessica. "If he's not Ethan's biological father and you're divorced, he has no legal rights over the boy. As for Emily, even though she's his biological daughter, a judge will consider the child's well-being when deciding custody." "But he has money and influence. And I have 15 years of experience dealing with powerful men who think they can intimidate defenseless women. Let's start by filing a restraining order against Robert. That will keep him away from you while we settle custody." Attorney Sarah explained she would need documents and witnesses to build the case. Dr. William had already offered to testify about Jessica's and the children's emotional state when they arrived in town. "I'll also need Father Michael to testify about the conditions under which you arrived here and the children's psychological state." "Of course, Doctor. We'll do whatever's necessary," said Michael. "There's one more thing. We need to find out who Ethan's biological father is. If we can locate him and he formally renounces paternal rights, it strengthens your case even more." Jessica paled at the suggestion. "Doctor, that's complicated. Ethan's father doesn't know he exists." "Mrs. Reynolds, I understand this may be difficult, but it's important for the boy's legal protection." After the attorney left, promising to return in 2 days with the restraining order paperwork, Michael and Jessica were alone on the porch while the children played in the backyard. "Michael, I need to tell you the truth about Ethan," Jessica said, her voice trembling. "Jessica, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Attorney Sarah is right. If we don't resolve this now, it'll be a problem forever." She took a deep breath and looked straight into her brother's eyes. "Ethan's father is someone you know very well. In fact, it's someone you see every day in the mirror." Michael felt the world spin around him. Deep down, he had suspected this possibility ever since he noticed the physical resemblance between himself and the boy, but hearing the confirmation was devastating. "Jessica, when... Do you remember that night, 2 weeks before you entered the seminary? You had come home after breaking up with Ashley, your girlfriend at the time. You were desperate, saying you had ruined everything, that you had hurt the only person you truly loved." Michael remembered that night perfectly. Ashley had been pregnant, but he had discovered she was involved with another man. The breakup had been traumatic, and he had come home drunk and emotionally shattered. "You drank so much that night. You said your life was ruined, that you'd never be able to trust anyone again. I tried to comfort you and things just happened," Jessica continued, tears streaming down her face. "My God, Jessica, we were practically kids. You were only 17, and you were 22. The next morning, when you woke up and realized what had happened, you were horrified. You said you had committed a terrible sin, that we could never look each other in the eye again." "That's why I entered the seminary so quickly," Michael murmured, covering his face with his hands. And that's why I ran away from home. 2 weeks later, you were already in the seminary, and I found out I was pregnant. I didn't know what to do, where to go, how to tell you. Why didn't you ever tell me? All these years, because you had found your calling, Michael. You were happy serving God, helping people. How could I destroy that by telling you you had a son? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The two of them sat in silence for long minutes, processing the magnitude of the revelation. Ethan played in the yard, unaware that his life had just completely changed. Does he know? Michael asked. No, but lately he's been asking questions about his father, noticing the similarities between you two. He's very smart, Michael. I think deep down, he already suspects something. And now, what do we do with this information? I don't know. Attorney Sarah needs the father's identity to legally protect Ethan. But if they find out it's you, your career in the church is over. Michael stood and walked to the backyard fence, watching Ethan as he chased a bull. The boy noticed he was being watched and waved cheerfully. Dad, Michael murmured to himself, testing the word he never thought he'd say. Michael, I understand if you want us to leave. I never meant for you to find out, never meant to complicate your life, Jessica said, stepping closer to him. Leave? Jessica, that boy is my son. How can I let him go knowing that? But what about your calling? What about the church? Michael looked at the church where he had served for 15 years, then back at Ethan and Emily playing innocently in the yard. My calling has always been to help people, to protect those in need, to care for those who have nowhere else to go. Perhaps I've found the truest way to fulfill this calling. That afternoon, while the children napped, Michael locked himself in the office to reflect on his situation. 15 years devoted to God, preaching about family, values, Christian morals. And now he discovered he had a son he'd never known. Around 5 in the evening, Mrs. Catherine appeared again, this time with a flimsy excuse about needing to check the church's record books. Father Michael, that attorney who was here this morning, did she come because of your sister? Mrs. Catherine, with all due respect, my family's personal matters are not the parish's concern. Of course. It's just that people in town are talking, Mrs. Eunice saw an official car parked here, and you know how gossip spread. What exactly are people saying? Well, there are rumors your sister is running from something, and that boy. Father, everyone notices the resemblance between you two. People are starting to ask questions. Michael realized the situation was becoming untenable. The small town of Clearwater couldn't keep secrets for long. Mrs. Catherine, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you nothing inappropriate is happening here. I know, Father. I trust you completely. But perhaps it would be better if your sister and the children stayed somewhere else, just to avoid misunderstandings. After Catherine left, clearly unsatisfied with Michael's vague answers, he spoke to Jessica about the need to make a decision quickly. People are suspicious, Jessica. Soon the whole town will be talking about us. Michael, if you want, we can leave today. I can take a bus anywhere, start a new life in another city. No, you stay. I'm the one who needs to make a difficult choice. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Michael stayed in the church, praying for guidance. At 42, he had never seriously questioned his calling, but now, discovering he was a father, everything had changed. Around midnight, he heard footsteps and turned to see Ethan walking toward him. Uncle Michael, are you okay? Mom said you seemed sad. Come here, son. Michael opened his arms to the boy. Ethan sat beside him on the front pew and they stayed silent for a few minutes. Uncle Michael, can I ask you something serious? Of course, Ethan. You're my father, aren't you? The question struck Michael like lightning. He looked into those dark eyes, so much like his own, and saw the intelligence and perception of a child who had grown up too fast. Why do you ask that? Because I know I'm not Robert's son. He always treated me differently from Emily, and when he got mad at me, he'd say things like, "You're not even my real son." I never understood until now. Ethan. And because you look at me the same way Mom does, with that look of loving someone so much, but also being sad because you can't show it. Tears welled in Michael's eyes. How could an 8-year-old be so perceptive? My son, yes, I am your father. Ethan nodded, as if he'd known the answer all along. Why did you never tell me? Because it's complicated, Ethan. When you were born, I was already a priest. Priests can't have children, can't get married. I had to choose between being your father or continuing as a priest. And you chose to be a priest. At the time, I thought it was the right choice, but now, knowing you, seeing the incredible boy you are, I'm not sure I made the right decision. Ethan was thoughtful for a moment. Dad. Can I call you Dad? You can call me whatever you want, son. Dad, do you regret being a priest? I don't regret helping so many people all these years, but I do regret not being present in your life from the beginning. And now? What's going to happen? Michael embraced the son he had only just truly come to know. Now we'll figure it out together, but one thing I can promise you, I won't let you and your mother suffer alone ever again. The next morning, Robert Johnson arrived in Clearwater. He had hired a private investigator who tracked Jessica down to the town. Robert was a 45-year-old man, tall, well-dressed, with an arrogant expression that showed he was used to getting whatever he wanted. The first person he sought out was Mrs. Catherine, who worked at the church and surely knew everyone's comings and goings in town. Ma'am, I'm Robert Johnson. I'm looking for my wife, Jessica, and my 2 children. I have information that they might be staying at the parish house. Catherine, already suspicious of the situation, saw an opportunity to uncover the truth. Oh yes, they've been there for a few days. Actually, I'm quite concerned about this whole situation. Concerned? Why? Well, it's just that the boy, Ethan, bears a striking resemblance to Father Michael Reynolds. People in town have been talking. Robert smiled predatorily. That information was exactly what he needed to destroy Jessica once and for all. How interesting. Do you think I could speak with this priest? Of course. He should be at the church preparing for Sunday's Mass. Robert walked to the church with a victorious smile on his face. He had finally found the perfect weapon to destroy Jessica and ensure she could never escape him again. When he entered the church, he found Michael arranging the altar for Sunday service. Father Michael Reynolds? Yes, that's me. How can I help you? My name is Robert Johnson. I'm the husband of Jessica Reynolds, who I believe is staying in your home. Michael felt his blood run cold, but he kept his composure. Mr. Johnson, your ex-wife and her children are under my protection for safety reasons. Ex-wife? Robert laughed cynically. We haven't finalized the divorce yet, Father. And as for the children, well, there are some interesting questions about that I'd like to discuss with you. I have nothing to discuss with you. Jessica told me about your threats. Threats? Father, you've been misinformed. I just want my family back, but I've discovered some very interesting things about young Ethan. Robert stepped closer to Michael with a menacing look. People in town have been talking about the striking resemblance between you and that boy. Quite the coincidence, don't you think? I don't know what you're talking about. Father, I've done the math. Ethan was born exactly 9 months after a time when Jessica was living here in Clearwater, the same time you were finishing your studies at the seminary. Michael realized Robert had connected the dots and now posed an even greater threat. Mr. Johnson, I suggest you leave town immediately. Jessica has already filed a restraining order against you. A restraining order? Robert let out a mocking laugh. Father, when I tell the bishop of the diocese about your secret paternity, a simple restraining order will be the least of your problems. What do you want? I want my wife back. I want her to drop all accusations against me, and I want you to disappear from her life forever. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow, I'll be in the bishop's office telling this whole sordid story. Just imagine, a priest who fathered a child with his own sister and kept it secret for years. Your career will be ruined, Father. Michael's legs trembled. Robert didn't know that he and Jessica were siblings by blood. But even so, the accusation of a priest having a secret child would be enough to destroy his life. I'll give you 24 hours to decide. Either Jessica comes back with me willingly, or I destroy both of your lives. After Robert left the church, Michael rushed home and told Jessica about the conversation. He knows Jessica. He found out about Ethan and is blackmailing us. Michael, you can't sacrifice your career for our sake. Take the children and I'll go with him. No, I won't let you go back to that man. He'll make your life hell, and the children's too. But if you lose your position in the church, how will you support yourself? How will you care for the people in the community who depend on you? Michael looked out the window and saw Ethan and Emily playing in the yard, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Jessica, I have 15 years worth of savings. I have an education, I can work in other fields, but Ethan only has one father, and Emily only has one mother who truly loves her. Are you sure about what you're saying? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. That afternoon, Michael went to Dr. William for advice about the situation. Doctor, I need your help. Robert Johnson has come to town and is blackmailing us. That man is capable of anything, Father. Years ago, when they tried to sue him, he threatened several witnesses. He's dangerous. He found out I'm Ethan's father and is threatening to tell the bishop everything if Jessica doesn't go back to him. Dr. William fell silent for a moment, processing the information. Father, may I ask you a personal question? Do you love that boy? With all my soul. And do you love your sister? As a brother, yes. I want to protect her and see her happy. Then the decision is simple. You can remain a priest and lose them forever, or you can give up the cassock and gain a family. Doctor, it's not that simple. Father Michael, let me tell you something I've never told anyone. When I was young, I also had to choose between my medical career and the woman I loved. I chose the career. Now, at 70 years old, I'm a respected doctor, but I die of loneliness every day. The doctor's words echoed in Michael's mind all afternoon. When evening came, he gathered Jessica and the children in the living room for a serious talk. Kids, you know your mother, and you are going through a tough time, right? Yes, Uncle Michael, Ethan replied. The bad man is trying to find us. Well, tomorrow I'm going to make a very important decision that will change all our lives. What kind of decision? Emily asked, clinging to her mother. I'm going to stop being a priest, and we're going to become a real family. Ethan's eyes widened. You can do that? Yes, I can. And I will, because I love you more than anything in this world. So you can really be my dad? Ethan asked, emotional. I'll be your dad, Emily's dad, and I'll take care of your mother forever. Emily clapped her hands with joy, but Jessica still looked worried. Michael, are you sure? Robert won't give up just because you stop being a priest. I know, but Attorney Sarah said she has a strategy to deal with him, and Dr. William mentioned he has other enemies in the area. We'll face him together as a family. On Sunday morning, the church was packed for the weekly mass. Robert Johnson sat in the front row, a smug smile on his face. Mrs. Catherine watched everything from the sacristy, curious to see how things would unfold. Michael stepped up to the pulpit and looked at the congregation that had followed him for 15 years. He saw familiar faces, people he had baptized, married, and comforted in hard times. Brothers and sisters, today I have an important confession to make, he began, his voice steady. A murmur swept through the church. Robert prepared to savor his victory. Throughout all these years serving this community, I have always preached about truth, love, family, and forgiveness. Today I've discovered it's time to apply those values to my own life. Jessica was in the sacristy with the children, gripping Ethan's hand tightly. 8 years ago, before I was ordained as a priest, I made a mistake that resulted in the birth of a child. Out of cowardice and fear, I never took responsibility for that child. The church fell into absolute silence. Robert smiled, thinking Michael was destroying himself. That child grew up without a father, suffering from the absence of a paternal figure. His mother faced unimaginable hardships raising him alone. Ethan appeared at the sacristy door and walked slowly toward the altar. Today, that child is here with us. And I can no longer deny the truth. Michael stepped down from the pulpit and embraced Ethan. This is my son, Ethan, and I am proud of him. A murmur of surprise swept through the congregation, but there was no judgment on the people's faces, only understanding. That is why I am resigning from my position as priest of this parish. I will take on my responsibilities as a father and protect my family." Robert stood up, furious to see his plan had failed. "This is a scandal," he shouted. "This man has deceived you for years." But before he could continue, Dr. William rose in the middle of the church. "The only scandal here is the presence of Robert Johnson, a man who threatens and harasses defenseless women and children." Other members of the congregation began speaking out against Robert, who realized he was losing control of the situation. "You know nothing. That woman is my wife, and those children are mine." "Actually, that's not true," said a firm voice at the church entrance. Everyone turned to see Attorney Sarah walking down the center aisle with a folder of documents in hand. "I am the Reynolds family's attorney. Mr. Robert Johnson, you are violating a restraining order by approaching my client. Furthermore, my investigations have uncovered several irregularities in your paternity documents." Robert paled. "What irregularities?" "You forged Jessica's signature on multiple legal documents, including Ethan's paternity declaration. That constitutes the crime of falsifying public records." The attorney handed Robert a copy of the documents. "Additionally, I've located 3 other women who suffered the same threats and blackmail you used against my client. They've all agreed to testify against you." Robert realized his strategy had completely unraveled. "This is a setup. You can't prove anything." "Actually, we can," said another voice at the church entrance. A man in a suit entered, accompanied by 2 officers. "I am District Attorney Mark Wilson. Robert Johnson, you are being summoned to appear in court to answer charges of document forgery, threats, harassment, and attempted blackmail." Robert tried to argue, but the officers escorted him out of the church under the satisfied gazes of the congregation. When the commotion settled, Bishop Henry, who had arrived quietly during Michael's confession, approached the altar. "Father Michael, or should I say Michael," the bishop said with a solemn expression, "your actions today were courageous and honest. Bishop Henry, I accept any punishment you deem appropriate." "Punishment? My son, what I witnessed today was a man taking responsibility and protecting his family. That is admirable, not punishable." The bishop turned to the congregation. "Years ago, I also faced a similar situation. The difference is, I didn't have the courage Michael showed today. That's why I'm making him an offer. Temporarily step away from the priesthood to care for his family. When he feels ready, if he still wishes, he can return as a permanent deacon, allowed to be married and have a family." The proposal surprised everyone, including Michael. "Bishop Henry, is this possible?" "Within the church's rules, yes. You would serve as a deacon, could perform baptisms, weddings, teach catechism, but you couldn't celebrate Mass or hear confessions." Michael looked at Jessica and the children, then at the congregation supporting him. "I accept your offer, Bishop Henry, but first I need to care for my family." The church erupted in applause. People stood up and began hugging Michael, Jessica, and the children. Mrs. Catherine, who had hoped to witness Michael's downfall, realized she was actually seeing his redemption. In the following months, Robert Johnson was convicted of document forgery and threats. He lost all rights to Emily and was forbidden from approaching the Reynolds family. Michael found work as a history teacher at the local school, using his background in theology and history. Jessica opened a small craft shop in town and gradually rebuilt her life. Ethan flourished, finally having a present father. Emily quickly adapted to her new reality and began calling Michael Daddy Mike to distinguish him from her biological father. The parish house was renovated and turned into a shelter for at-risk families, an idea Michael proposed that was enthusiastically approved by the community. A year later, Michael and Jessica married in a simple ceremony at the same church where it all began. Bishop Henry officiated, and the entire community came to celebrate. During the ceremony, Ethan served as the ring bearer and Emily as the flower girl. Dr. William was the best man, and Attorney Sarah, who had become a family friend, was the matron of honor. "Michael Reynolds, do you take Jessica as your wife to love and cherish her in joy and sorrow, in sickness and in health, for all the days of your life?" Bishop Henry asked. "I do," Michael replied, looking into the eyes of the woman he had reunited with, and the children he could now officially call his own. 2 years later, when Michael felt ready, he returned to the church as a permanent deacon. Now he could serve the community without giving up his family. 11-year-old Ethan became an altar boy and helped his father with church activities. 9-year-old Emily joined the children's choir and loved helping decorate the altar. The shelter operating in the former parish house had already helped dozens of at-risk families. Jessica coordinated volunteer activities, and many women in town contributed with donations and work. Mrs. Catherine, initially resentful of the situation, ended up becoming one of the shelter's biggest supporters. She found in helping needy families a way to channel her protective instincts. Dr. William became the shelter's volunteer doctor and often said he had found in the Reynolds family the happiness he never dared to seek in his own life. One Sunday afternoon, after a particularly moving service at the church, Michael walked with his family through the garden they had created behind the shelter. Ethan, now a confident and happy preteen, ran with Emily among the flowers Jessica had planted. The boy who once questioned his identity now knew exactly who he was and where he came from. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Ethan said, approaching Michael. "Always, son." "Do you regret anything that happened? About leaving the priesthood or the chaos we went through?" Michael looked at Jessica, who was gently pushing Emily on the swing he had built, then turned his gaze toward the shelter where other families were receiving the same support they themselves had once needed. "Ethan, I've learned that sometimes we have to lose certain things to find others that are far more important. I don't regret anything, because it all led me to you." "And do you think God was angry when you stopped being a priest?" Michael smiled and hugged his son. "I think God was proud because I learned to love truly, and I discovered there are many ways to serve others." That night, after the children had gone to sleep, Michael and Jessica sat on the porch of their new home, watching the stars. "Do you think we made the right choices?" Jessica asked. "Look around us, Jessica. We have 2 happy, healthy children, a marriage built on real love, and we're helping other families rebuild their lives. If these aren't the right choices, I don't know what would be. Sometimes I wonder how different our lives would have been if you had known about Ethan from the beginning. Maybe we would have made different decisions, but maybe we wouldn't have been ready to face the challenges we did. Everything happened at the right time." "Michael." "Yes? Thank you for never giving up on us. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a father and a husband. Thank you for teaching me that true love is worth any sacrifice." They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the peaceful sounds of the Clearwater night. "You know something?" Michael said suddenly. "What?" "I think our story is just beginning." Jessica smiled and rested her head on her husband's shoulder. "I'm glad, because now that we've found our family, I don't want to waste a single minute of the time we have together." In the distance, the church bell struck midnight, marking the start of a new day for the family that had found each other under the most unlikely circumstances and built their happiness on the foundation of true love and forgiveness. The end. What did you think of this story of new beginnings and forgiveness? Did Jessica and Michael make the right choices by facing their past together? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this one. Thank you so much for joining us.